Yeah, well, that's a funny story. I was a gunner on a 105 howitzer, and a gunner, that's a corporal rank. And but I was transferred from that into an anti-tank section. And this anti-tank leader, the guy was a first lieutenant, and he and I just didn't quite see eye to eye on anything. And I guess it was my own fault, but he recommended that I be reduced in rank for inefficiency. So I went home that night and told Camilla, hey, help me take my stripes off. I got busted. And she was naturally kind of upset. And I said, now just don't worry about this. I'll have this back with interest in no time. Well, naturally, when I went back, I told them I don't want to be in this anti-tank outfit anymore. So they put me somewhere. I think they sent me up to motor pool. But they're starting a class in fire direction. And, of course, if anybody wasn't doing anything, they started a class, they sent you to school. So since I was just floating around there just doing nothing, you might say, they put me in this class. Well, it just so happened that, you know, I kind of took to how you performed all this stuff, you know. And so I guess it was about a month later, this major says, hey, says, you think you'd handle a sergeant's job? I said, yeah, I think so. And then, so they made me a three-striper. So then about another month, the fellow who was a staff sergeant, who was the chief of the section, you might say, or the section leader for the Fire Direction Center, got transferred. So this same major came up and says, hey, says, do you think if you made staff sergeant that you could keep your nose clean? I said, yeah, I think I could. So I made staff sergeant. So in a 3-month time from the time that I was made a private, I was a staff sergeant. So that I thought I was pretty fortunate there. I wasn't too sold on being an instructor, and I had a request in for a transfer to everything that came up, even to going back to my old outfit. So when the CQ told me to report to the infirmary, I figured that, you know, every time they shipped you out, they checked you over a little bit. So I figured I was going someplace, one of those transfers, you know. So I went down there and asked this doctor, I said, hey, what's up? He said, well, you can get out of the Army if you want to, so you don't have to, but you can if you want to. I said, boy, let's get this going. I'm ready. So I got out of the Army on September 20th, 1944. And I do draw a disability check from the military or from the government. I'm considered a disabled veteran. Have been all these years, but it hadn't bothered me any. We went up to Virginia, and AP Hill, Virginia. Had a terrible time finding that place. Nobody knew where it was. Just knew it was close to Fredericksburg, but you asked somebody where it was, never heard of it. Anyhow, we finally found it. And that was, we used to use that stop to get our equipment ready to go, crate up what needed to be crated up, waterproofed what needed to be waterproofed, and that sort of thing. So we were there in Virginia for, oh, I don't know, don't remember. at least a week or two. And then we got the word to go over to New York or New Jersey, and got on that ship, took off. Took us 14 days. You know, they after we got out to sea, they finally told us where we was going. They said we was going to Africa. And I thought, man, I'll be seeing lions and tigers and all sorts of things like that. So the next interesting thing was that we went through the Straits of Gibraltar. Saw all that is pretty early in the morning. And I guess it was that the next morning we landed in Oran, pulled into Oran. I thought, oh man, we're in Africa. The ship had stopped, had pulled up to the dock. I jumped up and looked out on deck, and I looked around, and shoot, here's a town that looked like downtown Dallas. I thought I was going to be out in the jungle talking about Africa. That's how much I knew about what was going on. Anyhow, we landed in Oran, and we were in Arzu, a little town out from Oran, where the trains coming from where they were fighting would stop for water at Arzu, and we were bivouacked pretty close to that. So when the trains would stop, some of the guys would go down and trade for souvenirs and things. That these were prisoners of war trains. Some that could trade with these prisoners, give them cigarettes for whatever they had, trinkets. We had a kid in our outfit that was down talking to these guys, a bunch of Italian prisoners. He ran into his brother. His brother was a prisoner of war. So, anyhow, that was quite a situation. But anyhow, we moved from there on down into around City Bell Abbas and on down to, we kind of did some work with just maneuvers with French Foreign Legion troops, and ran into a fellow in one of those African towns, I don't remember, might have been City Bell Abbas, that he had come over before the fighting had started in Africa to visit his son, who was in the French Foreign Legion. He was from Chicago, I believe he was. And the war started, and he couldn't get back to the United States. So he had a little lamp shop there in City Bell Abbas, I believe it was. Anyhow, the word came that we were going to relieve I believe it was the 1st Division or 3rd, anyhow, the division that was chasing Rommel. But they had Rommel on the move so fast that we never did materialize, so we never did get into anything in Africa. But then in September, we got all of our equipment ready again and loaded on ship, took off. They briefed us the night before the landing at Salerno what to do and where to go and how to meet up with our unit that we're supposed to meet up with and all that sort of information. And I'd been briefed that I was in charge of the section. So we came down the net into the boats and headed for the beach, and this sailor just wheeled us right up to the beach and let the front end down and told us, get out, and we got out. And the front of that boat no more than hit the water as he started back up again. Anyhow, we took off to the left like I was told to do, looking for the irrigation ditch that they had told me to go up. But the first thing we knew, we were face to face with a tank, German tank. And we were so close to it, they couldn't get the turret gun down enough to hit us. As I recall, they blasted around over our heads. I don't really remember whether they did or whether I just think they did. But anyhow, we took off, and before they could get turned around to where they could do anything about our being there, we were gone and out of sight. We finally found our unit and set up our fire direction center and started firing. The guns had already come ashore and we were ready to go. So we didn't move inland much that first day. And sometime along in there, they told us, it looks like we're going to have to get back on the ship. So as many of you as can, get back on when the ships come. But in the meantime, before the ships came, and I don't know if they ever got there or not, but sometime after that, the Germans retreated, and we moved inland, and that was the beginning of the Italian campaign. It was a muddy mess. Well, that was in September. In about October or November, it started raining and snowing, and man, what a mess. And we finally got to Torpedo River, tried to cross that, and got shot up pretty bad, and they called a truce so that the Americans and the Germans could pick up their dead and wounded. It was just an impossible feat to cross that river. After that, we went on up the Leary Valley till we got to the St. Benedictine Monastery. And when we got there, we couldn't fire over the monastery or so many yards to the left or right or so many yards in front of it. But we kept getting fire from that monastery. So finally, they decided to call the bombers in, and they bombed it all day long, one day. And the next day they brought the fighters in and the dive bombers. And a few days later, the monastery was taken by Polish troops. Anyhow, it wasn't long after that till our unit had an airplane that we did aerial observation with to get on targets. So I went up with this guy one day as he was we had two sergeants and a lieutenant that flew those planes, and I happened to be with this lieutenant that day, and we took off. He said, "Hey, I hear you're leaving right away." I said, "Yeah, I don't know, in a few days, I don't remember how long." So he banked and turned, and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm leaving too. I'm going back to Fort Rucker to get some training." I said, "I'm not about to get up here with you. Both of us on our way home." So he landed, and he was a suspicious sort of fellow, I guess. But anyhow, soon after that, I went back to Africa, to Camp Donby Passage in Casablanca. And you know, it was strange to see those Italian prisoners walking guard at Camp Donby Passage in Casablanca. By the way, the first English-speaking Italian I saw at Salerno says, "Hey, Joe, where you been? We've been waiting for you." Anyhow, that's how dangerous those Italians were. But Anyhow, got on back to the States, signed to Fort Bragg, had a 21-day leave, but right at the end of that 21-day leave, I started feeling kind of sick. And I thought I knew what was happening. It was malaria. I had stopped taking my Atabrin while I was on leave. So when I reported to Fort Bragg, I just reported to my unit and then told them, hey, I got to make sick leave, or sick call. So went to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for a month with this problem. In the meantime, I had got a corneal ulcer on my eye, and they operated on that. And when I got out of the hospital, I went back to the outfit and was there instructing. And one day I walked into the orderly room, and the charge of quarters says, hey, got word they want to see you down at the infirmary. So I said, you know what it's for? Nope, didn't know. So I took off down to the infirmary and got there, and the doctor says, step there in front of the x-ray machine. I said, hey, doc, what's this all about? What's going on? Because I had put in a request for transfer to everything I could think of, and I figured maybe it was a transfer coming up, and he was going to check me out before they shipped me out. He says, well, says you can get out of the Army if you want to. Says you don't have to, but you can get out if you want to. I said, well, let's get on with it. I'm ready. So anyhow.